happened.
And what I
So
hope is that the crowd that was there, they get an appreciation of what navigation is all about. Yeah.
and it's really too, even for Wally too. Cause same thing. I was asking him, when he was growing up in Samoa, and to get to, really in this whole Pacific sense. That
Cause he called Hokupa, he called it Polaris, yeah. And he said, "Oh yeah, we can't see it from Samoa, but over here we can't see it. It's really low on the
yeah,
horizon.
yeah, here.
It's like 10, 20 degrees on the horizon, but they can see Hanai Kamalama.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah,
And that one moves, so yeah.
it crosses the sky. Yeah, it's interesting, like you said, like for Cecilio them and many of them, how in learning from Mao, how important, and then you recognize it, right? Because it moves so much, and it's that big thing that's up there. It's
Okay, I think we're set. So what we've been doing is having the interviewees say their name and official title, and then just for the editor's sake, having them say their name and spell it.
okay.
So
Sure.
if you wouldn't mind doing that, just a conversation between the two of you.
Okay.
You're just capturing it.
Okay, cool. So you want me to give you my full name
And the title you prefer to go by.
oh title.
Or whenever you folks are ready.
Okay. Name is Chad Paishon, Chadd. Last name P as in Paul, Aishon. And title? Navigator.
Okay.
All right, and
whenever you want to start, we're good.
okay, Chad, how long have you been navigating?
I think actively navigating for the canoe since, since 1995. I've been actively, either at some point being a student and actively learning. First started learning really back in 1992, 91, 92 with Nainoa and with Mao, and eventually with Shorty and Bertelman. So since that time, really now, in the beginning years as a student, then more so now, since 2007, since our last voyage, being given the, I don't know to call it a graduation, but being given the title from Mao, along with 4 other navigators from Hawaii, the title pool from Mao itself since 2007.
So is there like an uniki ceremony for navigation?
Yeah, that's probably more accurate in that sense. That in the sense of pool for Mao and his people in Micronesia, that it's that uniki ceremony that recognizing and really passing on more so of a sense of responsibility of what you've been taught, and pretty much a roadmap for you to follow as a pool.
Do you think that traditional navigators is a special trait or quality that you need to have when you go into the education system, and then you come out, you uniki out, and you become a navigator?
Yeah, definitely. I think in that sense that for every navigator that does navigate the canoes now, you have this special sense, or things are recognized in you from your teachers, these qualities or these traits that you have, that they see within you, that you do have the potential to do this. And so it's really, as a navigator, being aware, of your surroundings, and being active in the sense of recognizing those things, and being able to be committed enough, focused enough, brave enough to make those decisions when they're necessary to.
And you described that you spent maybe 4 years learning the information, learning, getting the knowledge that you needed to
Mhm.
navigate. Does that give you enough information? Are you always learning?
Yeah, I think the first 4 years are in learning are pretty much the basics of setting a foundation for yourself. After that, it's a constant learning, because as a navigator, you're relying upon your environment, really, to tell you everything that you need to know. And because the environment changes, and because where you're voyaging upon the canoe, you see things differently every day. So constantly your knowledge, you have your foundational knowledge, but then you have to be able to constantly recognize things that, oh, you might have not seen this before, but being active enough and to constantly watch the change, and then to put that within your memory banks, to call up on it when you see something in the same light coming up about again. That might be another month from now, it might be 3 months from now, 6 months from now, it could be a year later that you recognize it again. So it's, you constantly learn, yeah, because we don't have those people that we can run back to and say, if you hadn't seen something before and go, oh, what was this? You have to be that active one to recognize it, and be that one that's gonna record it for yourself, and then to pass on that knowledge too.
Yeah, I interviewed Mao at one point, and he described having all of these thousands of chants that navigators depended on,
Right.
To give them information about the environment and the ecosystems,
Mm-hmm.
and how to navigate, how to get from place to place. With our navigation in Hawaii being so new,
Mm-hmm.
is there a way that information will be able to be transferred to another generation
Yeah.
of navigators?
I think so. I think all that information, all that knowledge, whether it be traditional in sense, things that have been handed down, but still yet in the same traditional sense, what is taking place now, to create those new chants that can add it to that library. That for the new ones that will continue after us, there's just more resource to take with you. So I think in the sense of still in those songs, in the ole, in the mele, in the leo, and even now in curriculum that gets written up, it's a traditional sense in the knowledge that came from the past, but we recognize that we live in this day and time.
So no matter what,
Yeah.
it keeps developing.
It keeps developing. Yeah, it continues to grow. It continues to expand, because it's really in that sense that we appreciate what our ancestors gave us, and their knowledge, their viewpoint of everything was so vast that we have to continue to be that. So not so narrow in the sense of focusing it, but not narrow in the sense of limiting ourselves.
Do you think that in this traditional navigation, there could be some kind of value or benefit for conservation, for
Definitely.
biodiversity?
There has to be, that point, because for every navigator, we need the environment to be, in its true sense, the way it, and not to be altered, in a sense, by our own undoing of what we're doing to change the environment, in that sense, of those decisions or those choices that we make, that could alter the environment in that sense. Because those type of things that change our environment, in that drastic sense, really alters navigation also, because it's no longer based on a tradition, but now it's based on something that was introduced.
If someone wanted to get involved with traditional navigation, how would they go about it? Is there a school? Is there
I think there isn't an actual navigation school, at least here, so to say, yet. There are probably more programs, education programs that are going on by the voyaging societies that are in Hawaii now, with Nakalaiva on the Big Island. There's the Polynesian Voyaging Society that's here also. The the voyaging family has grown throughout the islands now, and so each one of the islands, if not starting to create programs that can continue on the knowledge, and not have one yet, there's one pretty much that's being discussed to create an opportunity on each island.
Are you training navigators now?
Yes, we are. Right now, it's in that sense that it's in the same process that I started at, that now we start with the next ones because, really, in the sense now for myself, it's sitting in that role now as a teacher for the young ones. I never thought it would happen so fast, or I never thought that, that I would get to that point, to be at this point to start to teach, because it's humbling, it's a large responsibility, but yet it really talks about the success of our teachers and their methods, their understanding, their desire to pass on the knowledge that they've given to us, that's standing in their place now. And it's really in that sense of humility that we need to teach. We need to have those students.
I can't imagine what it would feel like to be selected by your teacher, do the navigation, and then to have the courage to go out and do it. Do you remember how your first solo navigation felt?
I remember it. It's funny because I didn't recognize it that's what was happening. I thought, because when I got given the opportunity, and I knew it was going to be my time to navigate, but I didn't know it was going to happen in that sense of process. Not until after the voyage itself did I understand what it was. It was because in that sense that when I did my first voyage by myself, my teacher was there, but wouldn't talk to me. And I didn't know why he wouldn't talk to me till after. I recognized that what it was because of that sign of respect, that he didn't need to talk to me in a sense because I knew everything that I needed to know to navigate. That time of having to go back to him and ask him, is that right or not, was done. That now it was more of a sign of respect that you know what you're doing, so don't talk to me, or I'm not going to talk to you because you can do it, you know it.
So up to that point, you were going on the canoe as a crew member?
I was going on the canoe as a crew member, as a student, focusing on learning as much as I could. And then when that time came, it was in a different sense.
So how important do you think that crew selection is? Do you select out of your school?
Crew selection is vital. It's without having that right, whether you call it gelling or everyone that comes together on that canoe, without that, things start to fall apart. Because whether it's communication, whether it's the same values that you have, whether it's the same, like Mao taught us a long time ago, we all got to see the same thing. If not, it'll fall apart. And it's true. It's true. So crew selection, we all have to see the same place. We all have to understand the same thing and come with the same focus, the same goal. Every time we do that, our voyages are successful.
So would you say all of your crew members are potential navigators in themselves?
They all are. They all are. They all have potential because they all are taught the basics of navigation, because they need to steer the canoe. They need to guide the canoe. They need to understand what stars we're asking them to follow, what swells, what birds we're looking at, all of those things, what colors in the sky we're talking about, and what's going to happen changing the weather. So they understand the basics of it. Every crew member that gets aboard the canoe.
Now, do you have, and without mentioning any names or identifying, do you have crew members that you think have the potential to become solo navigators?
Very much so. Very much so.
That they've already shown those characteristics that they need to have?
They show those characteristics, and it's really, for those crew members, it's really that sense that all they need to continue to go there is that sense of commitment, that sense of being brave enough to make that step towards that leadership.
So,
So you understand that,
Yeah.
Dad? He's not being mic'd, so.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
okay. All right. Okay. So how would you describe traditional non-instrument ocean navigation?
I think traditional non-instrument navigation really is looking at your environment that totally encompasses and surrounds the canoe, above it, under it, around it. So it's really that traditional sense of being someone who's connected, as far as a navigator, of someone that's being connected to your environment, totally 100% of yourself is connected to it, because it's all those things that surround you, that encompasses you the total time that you're on the canoe, that really is your instrument.
Do you use animals, I guess the fish, the birds, to help you in your navigation?
I think in the navigation, you're using everything in your environment, including the birds. That understanding which birds fly from islands, which birds live out upon the ocean, understanding their as far as their distance that they keep from the islands, looking at the type of fish that are in the ocean, which ones are migratory, which ones that live in deeper ocean at different time, knowing that in the different sides of the fish, how they're formed, knowing that there are more fishes that are deeper ocean, those that are closer to sea, understanding which, in that sense, traditional sense, certain pods of dolphins that live in certain areas, certain turtles that will live in certain areas. Those type of things that are passed down within tradition, that have been recognized from, time before, that are still there.
Yeah. You know that in the Micronesian islands, they have, they know where the turtles come from. They know where these certain populations are.
Right.
And for Hawaii, what place do you think the traditional navigation has in our community?
I think for Hawaii, really that the navigation for us has grown in importance in our community again. I think at one time, because there was so little known about it, that people didn't understand it so much. But now that we recognize what the navigators look at, and that how important that it was traditionally before, and even more so now in this day and time, that being able to navigate a canoe traditionally really has that connection to environment, and which really causes us as island people to recognize how important that is, because we live on an island. We all live on islands, which in that sense is the same thing as the floating canoe. A voyaging canoe is a floating island for us. So someone that can guide that canoe and make successful landfall, and that every man, woman that stands on the deck of the canoe comes off being healthy, understanding their values, and choose to live in that way, being led by a navigator who can successfully help you get to that point. Now, within our island communities now, it's an important place to be at again.
Yeah. In Micronesia, when they held on to their traditions because primarily it was to harvest resources, right?
Right.
They were in very
Right.
small
Right.
atolls, and they navigated, they traveled elsewhere to harvest resources for the survival of their
Right.
culture. I see that as less important in Hawaii, but is fishing important in Hawaii?
It's
For the navigators, I mean?
yeah. Really, fishing for the navigators on the canoe, it's a really important thing, because really as the navigator of the canoe, you're the father of the canoe. So really, the ability to fish, to sustain the life of the canoe, fish is a vital part of sustaining this canoe. And really, maybe even in that sense of fishing being important, even as a metaphor, if we can't feed our people in this day and time, you know, for a canoe, we don't rely on anybody bringing us supplies. We rely upon the skill of everyone that's aboard that canoe. We rely upon knowing, like you said, in Micronesia, knowing where those resources are and knowing that those resources will be there, you know, to sustain our people, not just for tomorrow, but generations that will come after us. It's really in that same sense that those navigators that are able to find those resources are able to understand them and sustain them. That fishing side of it is a major part of everything.
Do you think it takes an innate ability? In other words, you got to be born with this ability to navigate, or do you think you can be trained, or
I think people can be trained in it. I think there's something that is innate in navigators. That's why even in this day and time, you know, we haven't built it more so into a school. There's, you know, 5 of us now in Hawaii. There are more in Micronesia because they're able to continue their traditions. But I think for now, I think that innate ability that people are born into, if it's able to be cultivated and developed, I think you'll have more navigators. But if we take away that ability for those people to develop that skill, I think we're probably more apt to losing those people in this day and time because there's more distractions than there were, we would say, you know, when we were little kids. But there's more things to distract us from recognizing those senses if we let it. You know.
So it would take, I guess, through our talk here, it takes courage, commitment, awareness,
yeah,
to be a navigator. What are the things, other things would you need, and how do you meld it all together?
I think all those values that we look at in a navigator, I think it really takes it takes a community to develop a navigator, really, because when you have a community that cares about those things, about those values, then you have a community that supports this type of development in people. But when you have a community that values other things, then that's where our whole society starts to turn to. So when it's just like now in this day and time, we start to again recognize those things about being brave, being knowledgeable, being focused, paying attention to our environment, you know, even as simple as aloha. You know, for some people that's not simple. It can be a complex thing for some people, but yet when your community have those type of values, then you have the potential to develop great people.
So it would take a whole community to help develop a navigator, to find that right person, to get them the training and everything. What about preparing for the voyage? Does it take that whole community? Does it take a lot of preparation to prepare for a voyage?
I think in any voyage, what we've come to understand again, that it takes a community to create a crew, a navigator, a canoe that can sail successfully. It's not in the sense of an individual that can do it alone. It's in that sense that for a community that comes with that type of understanding, with that type of commitment, with that type of values, when you have a community that is based upon all those things, you'll find a community that is thriving. That's not just surviving, but they can sustain their community. That they have a community that sometimes some people will find it hard to understand how these people can do the things that they've done. It's very much, it reminds me so much about our kupuna. That when people found it hard to understand that these people with these type of resources could build voyaging canoes and inhabit islands across the Pacific. But yet they came from that type of community. They were raised in that type of community, so the people that came out of the community had this innate ability to do great things.
That also brings to mind that cultural value that Hawaiians have called laulima.
You know, it's really those cultural values that we do grow up in within our families, and in some shape, some way, some form, that when we continue to practice them every day, and it's everything like we said about the canoe. The canoe is an active thing. You have to continue to do it. If a canoe sits, it's no longer a canoe. A canoe is a canoe when it continues to go and do what it needs to. So it's really in that same sense that in every aspect, when we look at it, when we continue to practice those same values, then it's actively alive. You know, whether it be alau lima, or whether it be kokua, whether it be we say mahalo for things, or we practice it aloha. You know, it's in that sense that we become like a canoe. It's when we don't do it anymore, well then it doesn't live anymore. You know, it takes us to be actively doing it.
Earlier on, we talked about crew selection.
Mm-hmm.
And what place does protocol have in that?
I think more so now within crew selection. I think protocol, I think for us now, we've grown into the place to understand again what protocol is and start to recognize it. That it, I think for many of the crew members that sailed earlier, because they didn't understand it, I'm going to step out there and say they're afraid of protocol, just because they didn't understand it and thought that they would have to do a certain thing and didn't want to be embarrassed, basically. But I think for us understanding now the process of protocol, is that if you understand the process of it, then you can understand how you can be part of protocol, whether you know the language or not, whether you know the chant or not, that there is a process within protocol, that if you understand the process, you can be actively involved in it. Whether you know all the chants, whether you know none of them, but being an active part of it for every crew member now. Each one of them understand that it's just part of the voyage. It is part of everything that we do.
I see, like, a lot of times my understanding of protocol has changed, but a lot of times I think we don't really appreciate that the protocol is really a bunch of small agreements going on with everybody that's there.
Yeah. It's those small agreements that we make in the protocol, you know. So yeah, we're gonna do this, you're gonna do this, we're gonna reciprocate with this, and you're gonna reciprocate with this. And it really is really that simple. And that we recognize it between, and that's really what it is in the protocol, is that we recognize each other. That we understand who you are, we understand who we are, and this is what we come together with. Hey Allah, there's the protocol.
We got 15 minutes of more video time, but you're supposed to start our presentation
Yeah.
at 11, so it's up to you.
No, hopefully I got you enough time that we can edit down into something. That's what I was shooting for. And,
Hopefully I didn't babble.
I didn't babble.